Most people just want to be left alone. Most people have jobs and have to support their families. They don't have time to take off a week of work, hop on a bus and drive down to their nation's capital so they can burn their country's flag, right? That's not most people. When we see a lot of these nutcases out there, it's because they're from wealthy families and they really have nothing better to do. They're from colleges where they don't really actually have to study. We see a lot of these protests go on across the United States, and you get that thing, like, wow, there's some energy behind that or something like that, right? But the most people in the United States are too busy putting food on their table, paying down their mortgage, who are trying to make ends meet and pay that rent, keep up with their car payments. What this country has not seen in a long time is when the productive people in society, the people with jobs, come out onto the streets. We're going to talk about the difference between these barista, college, Antifa type protests versus when real working people show up. Because we've seen this in several places around the world. And when the working people show up, it's over. It's not even like close, but when the working people take to the streets, things get done. There isn't a person finger painting their grievances out there. There are linemen out there switching off everyone's power, okay? There are truck drivers parking on the highways and on the roads and blocking all traffic. You see the farmers show up in the downtown areas spraying poo and fertilizer all over the place. We see this in other countries. We see this in Europe, but we haven't seen that here in the United States. And I know a lot of people kind of long for that and hunger for that. But the simple fact is that most working people have to work. They work because they need to pay the bills. They work because they know that people are depending on them. But when you see society hit that tipping point where the working people are so aggrieved that they show up, friends, the world does change. We're going to talk about the difference between these type of protests because we may be seeing it turning the corner soon. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and we cover things on this channel that you won't hear on the mainstream media. We talk about what's really going on in the United States. We talk about why we have a Texas flag up here because we stand with them on what they're trying to do at their border. We never want to forget the border crisis, right? I'm from Pennsylvania. I don't have any links to Texas except for the fact that they are guarding our southern border. So yesterday, an interesting thing happened over in France. Well, several interesting things happened in France. In the dress rehearsal for the Olympics, a whole bunch of the dancers, instead of dancing, they stood up and raised a fist because of inequality or something like that. Ooh, very effective, powerful protest. And then apparently a few other people, more like working class people, set a series of arson fires that damaged several facilities and fiber optic cables to the high-speed rail across the entire country. And the entire high-speed rail network across the entire country came to a grinding halt just before the Olympics opening ceremony. Well, you can see what the effect of several hundred dancers not dancing was, which was like zero, nothing. Nobody even noticed. Didn't even make news out there. And then maybe just a handful of people, maybe several people, maybe even just one person who knew what to do, went over and started flipping switches because they know the system. And that's the difference we see here between the artsy people spray painting monuments, like in Washington, D.C. this week, versus when the aggrieved working people start acting out. We saw this in the Netherlands when the farmers said, enough of this. Because basically the government was like, we're going to shut down, was it like 25% of the farms? And the farmers are like, no. Like, not like, no, let's discuss this, but like, you need to leave now because you're done. We're going to come in there and we're going to shut you down. And if we have to park combines in front of your vehicles, if we have to run over your vehicles with tractors, we're going to do that because you're done. You step over this line, if I have to come out of my field to go deal with you, you're going to be dealt with. And you're going to be dealt with in such a way that we're not going to have to deal with you again. And they came in town and they came into the Capitol and stuff like that. And they basically communicated to everybody in the Netherlands, hey, we the farmers who feed you will not tolerate this. This is not happening. We're going to have to get these people out of office and we're going to have to get new people in office and we're going to have to fix this because this can't go forward. It's not like we can discuss this. It's just, it won't go forward. Same kind of thing happened over in France. They had their farmers finally get up in arms over Macron and his cronies. And they were pushing all sorts of stuff. And the farmers showed up. And suddenly the French government surrendered to the people. Once the farmers showed up, it was over. Now, you remember the protests up in Canada, right? Where the truckers started protesting? And do you remember how freaked out the Canadian government got? They started attacking and seizing people's bank accounts, not who were related to the truckers, but rather they donated something to the truckers. If you, heaven forbid, gave $5 to the truckers' rally to offset fuel or whatever like that, they froze your bank account. Doesn't matter if you're a mom and pop grocery store. Doesn't matter if you were just an individual. Nope, they just froze your bank accounts. Talk about tyranny out of control. This truckers' protest freaked them out. They lost their ever-loving minds. And they came out of the woodwork to shut this thing down as fast as possible. And by and large, they seemed to succeed. They came down so hard on these truckers that they stopped and that they went away, which is exactly what the Canadian government wanted. But at what point are we going to see that here in the United States? We see a little bit of that when people are showing up at the Trump rallies and such. But we haven't seen people in the United States get to the point where they said no. When the working people of the United States look at the federal government, look at their state governments and say, no, that's going to stop, and that's going to stop right now. No discussions, no negotiations, it's just over. You see that kind of vehemence and that kind of inflexibility whenever somebody starts bringing up Medicare or Social Security reform, right? Suddenly it's like, okay, that one's dead on arrival. But when are we going to get to that with other things? When are we going to get to that? And I think that that's what we kind of saw in 2001, in January. I think people saw how clear it was happening right in front of their faces. They're being lied to about even basic things of what even happened the previous November. And when they were lied to so flagrantly like that, people were understandably upset. And they were going to show up in force. And they did. And once again, that freaked out the government here in the United States. So much so that they had to make an example of these people so that it would never, ever happen again here in the United States. There wasn't any physical threat to the people in that building. But you know what it did? When you see people like this rise up the salt of the earth, rising up and saying no. They realize how little control they really have. Because the problem with these salt of the earth type people is the fact that there are millions and millions of more of them right behind them. They weren't there, but in a sense, they were there. They were watching. And that's why we saw them freak out and come down so hard on that. But they realized that they were at a tipping point. That if it went any bit further, it was going to be over. Not over for their political party, but over for the whole shenanigans. And I think that over the last 4 years, we've been seeing something very interesting where President Biden and his crew have pushed things, but they've only pushed things so hard because they realize how close that they've been for the last number of years to an all-out, on the streets, salt of the earth, farmers, truckers, industry workers, linemen, showing up and saying no. No, no, no. Now, I know you're not supposed to say no to kids anymore these days because it might hurt their feelings and damage them psychologically. But politicians, you definitely need to say no to, right? They need to hear from the people no, frequently and forcefully. If they don't, they're just going to keep on doing whatever they want to do. And that's what we've seen here in this country for far too long. The polite people of the United States have let the politicians walk all over them for many decades. And that brings us to the point where we are today, the trouble that we are in today. How do we get out of this? I don't see much of any other way other than they are going to step over the line and we are going to step out as well. Now, we've seen what baristas, Starbucks baristas who make coffee. We've seen the hairstylists, nothing against hairstylists or any of those positions, but when you had the liberal left-wing squads show up, and not even like the working left-wing people, but like the paid AstroTurf crazies that they recruit from college, the homeless people, right, who need to bathe, the Occupy Wall Street type people, not your ordinary people who own homes. We've seen what those protests look like, where they make some little tempest in a teapot kind of thing, you know. They go spray paint things, and they litter all over the place, and then it takes a whole bunch of people to clean up after them. They smear their poo all over stuff. Very unhygienic people, right? But when the working people step up and say, enough of this, when the people that run the power plants start flipping switches, when the linemen get up on the pole and turn off this neighborhood, their power, what happens when working people who know how things work, what happens when they stand up and say, no, not any more of this? They understand how the system works, and they know where a well-placed shoe, right? That's what the French word comes from, sabotage. Ironic, as we see what's happening over in France right now. The image is of somebody taking their shoe and throwing it into the gears of the machine and jamming it up, right? Well, when you have college people and people who don't know how things work, they know how to mess up a coffee machine. But when you start having truck drivers, when you start having industry people show up, and they know how to bring the country to its knees, when they look at Congress, when they look at the Senate, when they look at the White House and they say no, our protests are not going to look like their protests. When we finally get out there, we're not going to be waving signs around like we're 5-year-olds. Now, I mean, there's a time and a place for that, okay? I went on the March for Life for several years, and I think that was an important thing to be marching for, right? And peacefully marching for it. But when we have people basically doing a coup of the government, having handwritten signs and chants is just not really where you need to go with that. You need to stop the government, you need to stop the country, and you need to communicate very clearly to these people taking over the government that they don't control the country, that we control the country. They don't have ways of forcing us to work. They don't have ways of making sure the infrastructure stays infrastructured. We control all that. And if we don't give our consent, it's over. Oh, well, they have the military. Well, that's okay. That's cool. But the military needs water. The military needs food. The military needs transportation and fuel. Where's all that stuff come from? Oh, that's right. Us. We provide it. And at the end of the day, people are like, well, if you don't have tanks and aircraft, you can't do anything against the federal government. Yeah, we can. We can just stop. Well, stop what, Steve? We can stop everything. We can just stop everything. They're like, well, where's our fuel? Oh, well, it didn't come in. Why didn't it come in? I didn't pay the bill. That's why it didn't come in. Or the truck driver says, I just decided not to do that route. Right? We heard that conversation before about, truck drivers not delivering stuff to New York City. And people are like, wow, that would really mess things up really fast. And I was very clear at the time, and I said, this is unconfirmed. This is not going to happen. This is like, it's being discussed. And will there be any that start doing this? And maybe. But at some point, we are going to do that. And when we do that, it's going to be a very different thing. It's not going to be a bunch of people there waving signs and people missing out on their lattes. No. When we go on strike, when we the people go on strike, the working people, the salt of the earth people, the country will grind to a halt. And that will be a different kind of protest. Some of you guys are wondering what that next step looks like, and that's what I'm just kind of describing for you right now, is that when there is a protest that involves salt of the earth people, no-nonsense people who know how stuff works, things stop. Whether it's farmers parking their machinery on the highways or truckers parking their machinery on the highways, and police looking on and just not doing anything about it. Things can come to a stop and a halt, and you need to be prepared for the economy grinding to a halt, whether it's a foreign adversary attacking us or whether it's us ourselves who stop the machines of industry in order to bring illegitimate political powers to heel. Hopefully that was food for thought for you. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Obviously, watch what you say because we are guests here on this platform and it is all observed. You are in the public sphere, right? All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.